Welcome to Perpetual Life. So glad that you're here. So glad to be here tonight as we celebrate our Thanksgiving. And my name is Neil Vandry, and I'm your officiator here tonight. You know, tonight is a special one because we mark our 12th anniversary tonight. So we're 12 years now. We started at a smaller church in Hollywood, and now we're here in Pompano Beach. So glad to be here with you, and every month we send out around 6,600 newsletters to people all over the world. And I'm glad you're here in person, and I'm glad that those people are online watching us with Rudy and David in Zoom and the people with the YouTube live stream. So good to have you with us as well. Tonight we have two wonderful presentations. We've got Dr. Sandra Kaufmann, and we also have Bill Falloon giving their presentations, and we'll hear more about them in a moment. If this is your first time coming to Perpetual Life, I'd like to invite you to join our email list if you haven't yet given us your email list, or if you're not receiving a newsletter from us, but you've signed up, maybe we've got it wrong. Maybe we put it in, you know how an I can look like an L, can look like a number 1. So if you'd like to give us your email again, make sure that you get the newsletters. They're really great. They're full of information about age reversal and super health longevity topics from that are going on in different places around the world, and we like to put that information in along with the updates about what's happening here at the church as well. So that's what's happening with that, and I think it's time for us to have our creed. Dr. Dreyer, would you like to come forward and do it? Let's have Dr. Dreyer. Welcome, Dr. Dreyer, to the stage for our creed.
Thank you, Neil. I just want to briefly say that since the last time I was here, I went to the Cryonics Institute annual meeting in Detroit. It was fabulous. This is where they freeze bodies. These are for you guys who are too hot, you know, going into menopause. You can get chilled down, and you'll stay that way for a long time. Anyway. The other thing is we were filmed last meeting by a Danish film crew. And I gave an interview with the #1 television show in Martin Weil's Explore the World in France, Paris, and they're thinking of filming us, but very take footage from our stuff. So we may have a lot of French tourists here next year. In fact, it's going to be filmed, produced, and shown in France in January. So anyway, we believe that all of life is sacred, and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our prophets, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth. We follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will be solved only when humanity, through our unified efforts, becomes an instrument of universal resuscitation, when the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said, the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. So we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy, serving our Creator and the human race forever and ever. Okay.
Thank you, Peter. Okay. We have Dr. Kurt Whitmore with us here today. Thank you, Dr. Whitmore. Stand. Okay. So glad to have you, and Bruce, glad you came all the way from the other coast. Glad to have you here. I know it's a long way to come. Appreciate you being here. And there's also someone here, I don't know if he wants to be recognized, but he saw our documentary on Netflix, and he's here tonight. He's been going by the place. Do you want to say hello? We have Kyle from the martial arts studio. Stand, Kyle. He saw our Netflix video and he's got a martial arts studio right down the street here. He's our neighbor, and is glad to have you, Kyle and his brother there. All right. As a matter of fact, if anyone is here for the very first time, I'd like to welcome you. Shri, are you ready? If you're here for the very first time, please put your hands up. We have a gift for you. And also, we're going to give you some beads if you'd like to wear them. Those beads put you first in line for the Thanksgiving feast that we're having. So that's a good thing to have. Come on up this way, Vanessa. We have a couple here. And they have books for you. So when you leave, don't leave without your gift of a book that we have at the back table. So when you leave, be sure to see them. They're going to give you a gift. We don't want you to have to carry it around and lose track of it or lug it around. It's a big, heavy book. But when you leave, we have a gift for you of a special book that you may enjoy. So thank you for being here tonight. All right. How many people heard about this church? You received an email, so you know about the service tonight because of the email? And how many people received a text? You received a text? Very good. Who received a phone call? You got a phone call from one of our people? Great. And maybe you heard about it from a friend? From a friend, a couple of people? Okay. Very good. Did I miss anything? Facebook. You saw it on the Facebook notices? Okay. Good. Thanks, Michael. All right. But I know you'll be here anyway, Michael. Okay. I'd like to point out that we do have the RBS team, the Resurgence Biomedical team, and they're here in blue. Would you like to stand for a moment? They have the cryonics ambulance, the special ambulance out front, and as a surprise visitor, so yes. If you would like to tour this magnificent automobile, it's a special vehicle. It's specifically for cryonics patients. If you'd like to tour that, you can do that after our service tonight. During the part of our celebration of life and the banquet, they'll be doing tours all that time. So be sure to see it before they leave. Thanks for being here, team. All right. Okay. Did we get all the new guests? Do you all have new, those of you who are new, do you have beads? You got it. Okay, good. Everybody set? Great. Glad that you're here. Next month, we're going to have a special service on the remembrance of the resurrectables. Be sure to invite your friends to come to celebrate the holidays with us next month, as well as the remembrance of the resurrectables. We're going to have Javin Pierce from Pierce Medical giving a presentation next month as well. All right, so let's get right into our event. Our first speaker tonight is our good friend, Dr. Sandra Kaufmann, and she is the author of the Kaufmann Protocol. Dr. Kaufmann began her academic career in the field of cellular biology, earning a master's degree from the University of Connecticut in tropical ecology and plant physiology. Turning to medicine, she received her medical degree at the University of Maryland and completed a residency and fellowship at Johns Hopkins in the field of pediatric anesthesiology. For the last 5 years, she's been chief of pediatric anesthesia at the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, a nationally recognized center of excellence. And most recently, she was recognized as Best in Medicine by the American Health Council. Come on up, Dr. Kaufmann. Let me welcome our first speaker. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you guys hear me? Yes. So several things. Number one, I love you guys. I've been here before. I've been here so long that that's a really updated thing. I was the chief for 15 years, not 5, because I'm really old. And now I'm actually a transitional medical director, and I travel around the country doing other things. So I'm actually not a chief anymore. But anyway, it just shows you how long I have been here. The other thing, I love you guys, but I do have to say you're going to be victims of my crazy whims. So I think the last time I was here, I was obsessed with eating sugar, and I had this fantastic lecture on how to eat everything you want and then sort of like fight it, right? A few people have asked me about that. So recently, I've been obsessed with mast cells. I don't know if people know what they are or not. You will by the time you leave here. So if you're interested, great. If not, you can leave now. But this was my personal obsession. So when Neil said, hey, can you come give a talk? I'm like, absolutely. So you get to follow me along on my obsessive journey here. Where's the clicker? Got it. Okay. So the title of this is a little bit misleading because we have not mastered the mast cell per se. We've identified it as a problem, and there are ways that we can sort of fight it. It's a hopeful title. We're working on mastering it, but we have not done so yet. Okay, what is a mast cell? Well, these were identified in the 1880s by someone named von Recklinghaus. And I know I heard a few physicians out there. They're physicians, right? I heard Dr. So-and-so. Anyway, von Recklinghausen will be recognized because there's something called von Recklinghausen disease, and it's actually neurofibromatosis. And what's interesting about that particular disease is these lesions are filled with mast cells. But it wasn't until a med student a bunch of years later, Paul Ehrlich, looked at them under a microscope and called them Mast Cells. And apparently in that German, it means well-fed. Because if you look at them, they look really stuffed. And I'm going to show you a picture of that in a second. But what mast cells really are is they're first responders. We need to think of them as our EMS team of the immune system. And depending on what tissue they are in, they're very different. So here is our electron microscopy picture of a mast cell. And you see how the guy thought that they were well-fed. They're filled with a lot of granules, right? And if you look at it, depending on the cell, somewhere between 50 to 100 secretory granules, and they just sit there ready to release them, okay? Interesting thing about mast cells is they can be very long-lived. Most immune cells live for a couple days, a couple weeks. Mast cells can live for up to 3 years in humans. So these things are sitting there and they're ready to go. And they also can undergo many rounds of degranulating. You'd think they would go zoop, send out all of their secretome and then die. But they don't. They keep making it over and over and over again. So this is kind of going to be an enemy that we got to fight for a while. Depending on where these cells are, they tend to have different types of granules. So just as an example, the mucosal mast cells, they have more tryptase in them. And connective tissues have tryptase and chymotrypsin. So it's just an idea that they're variable depending on where you find them. The life of a mast cell. This is only important in that it's different than other immune cells. Most cells are sort of what they are. Mast cells are different. They're hemopoietic stem cells. They come from the progenitors, and they travel around undifferentiated. They land in a peripheral tissue, and then they decide what they're going to do. It's really interesting. And they always get drawn to areas that are exposed to the environment. So for us, that would be an airway, right? Because we breathe in air. Our gut, we're exposed to bacteria. And our skin. So this is where they go. So for the most part, you find them in your gut, your skin, and in your airway. All right, just an example. So they're floating around as progenitors. They go through your bloodstream. They end up in your skin. And then they decide to associate with different types of things. Bad word, right? Sorry. Caffeine's not kicking in yet. So they go associate with blood vessels or nerves or fat or whatever it is. And what's really interesting is, you know when you get that tingle in your skin when something freaks you out? That's mast cell release. So it's kind of really cool. And when you look at your skin, they live, when you are young, in your papillary dermis, for any dermatologists out there, rarely in the epidermis, rarely in the deep dermis, until you start aging, and then they become sort of more heterogeneous. So they change where they go. Okay, I am going to demonize mast cells in just a little bit, but we all do need to appreciate that they're actually beneficial, right? Not all things are bad, despite what I'm going to say about them in a little bit. Kind of like your best friend, right? Until they're not. Okay, what do? They regulate your vascular system. They cause things to have an increased blood flow. So they're going to vasodilate, and you're going to get angiogenesis, which is useful if your skin's hypoxic, not so useful if you've got a tumor sitting there, right? As I briefly mentioned before, it interacts with your immune cells. So all the dendritic cells, macrophages, et cetera, triggers them to become what they need to be. Because we talked about how it interacts with the environment, it responds to bacterial and parasitic infections. So if you look at someone's labs, you can sort of tell if they have a parasitic infection if you've got some elevated markers of mast cells, as an example. I love this. They're important for venom detoxification. So if anybody out there is a snake handler, this is really important for you. Tissue repair, right? They destroy tissue that's been destroyed so that they can clear it out and make new tissue. And then it's important for bone mineralization. So that's the essential list of good things that they do. How do they do this? They do this by releasing mediators. And there's 3 basic types. There's the granules that they've already made, and they're sitting there ready to go. And the biggest example of this is going to be histamine or serotonin. Then there's mediators that you make on demand coming from the lipid membrane, and these are going to be your leukotrienes and your prostaglandins. And then there's ones that you make sort of as you need it inside the cell in a normal fashion. So you get 3 sort of speeds as to what you can release. Turns out, everyone, when you think about a mast cell, thinks about histamine. Turns out there's hundreds of different things that a mast cell can actually release. This is a truncated list. I'm sure you're all memorizing this right now, right? The point being is that some of them are pro-inflammatory, some of them are anti-inflammatory, some build tissue, some break tissue down. It's a huge set of things. But we're going to focus on the ones, however, that cause us the most damage. And these are the proteases. And this is why I think that this is particularly important. What's a protease? A protease is something that dissolves protein. We are made of proteins. These will dissolve you, right? That's kind of disgusting, but it's what it is, right? We talk about proteases based on the amino acid that gets attacked. So there's two main categories. There's serine and then thiol. The serine are the most important. So they're the tryptases and the kinases. What's a tryptase? And I'm sorry, it used to line up a little bit better, got moved. So tryptases, I'm always kidding around, like tryptases trip over each other because they're just so compacted in there, right? It is the most prominent enzyme in a mast cell, the tryptases. And they create MMPs, specifically MMP9, and that dissolves collagen, specifically collagen 1 and collagen 3. And those are the most prominent collagens in your skin and in your bone. So when you have too much tryptase, your skin falls apart, as does your bone. That is not good. Weakens the dermal epidermal junction. If you look at skin and you get older, that dermal junction fails, your skin slides, and that's when people get that old sort of like skin that doesn't look quite right look. And that's a bad, should have had a picture of that. Next time I will. Okay. Kinases. Kinases are interesting. They also cause you to dissolve your skin by increasing MMP9, but they also take angiotensin 1 and convert it to angiotensin 2. What does that mean? It actually means that your blood pressure is going to go up because angiotensin 2 increases your blood pressure. And it turns out this enzyme also decreases an enzyme that gets rid of AGEs. So by going down a pathway of enzymes, you actually get increases in AGEs from kinases. Does that make sense? Yes, no, sort of? What's an AGE? Really? That is probably very untrue. So an AGE is an advanced glycation end product. And this is when glucose, or a piece of glucose, sticks to a protein and destroys it. Okay? There are 20-some subtypes, one of which is called methylglyoxal. And the enzyme to dissolve that is inhibited by this. That makes more sense? Thank you. No, this is good. Chime in. I appreciate that. Right, no, the impact is more important. You get more damage from AGEs because of this problem. Correct. The idea is that it's negative, but thank you. Okay, the other proteases, the serine class proteases are sort of less important. I only mention it, mast cell carboxypeptidase was sort of prevalent for a while. We don't have an answer for it yet, but it's on the list to be inclusive. Capsaicin C is really the more interesting one in this category. And the reason it's more interesting is it is an upstream activator of the kinases and the tryptases. So if you can turn this off, you save a lot of tissue destruction. And some very smart person has figured out to do this. There's a drug called brensocatib. Practice saying that because it doesn't sound right. Brensocatib. Unfortunately, it's $88,000 a year. So if we can find someone in this crowd to help pay for all of us, that would be a great drug for us to take. I'm not picking out anyone in particular, but it would be nice. Okay, now we have to get to histamine, because histamine has been demonized by everyone, and a lot of people in the longevity world think we need to block histamine. And to a certain degree, that's true, but not entirely. So let's talk about histamine for a little bit. It is a bioactive amine, right? It comes from histidine, mostly from mast cells, but also from basophils. And it does a lot of things around the body. It is important for a lot of physiologic things, a lot of immune things. It's actually a neurotransmitter, right? It's kind of interesting that people don't really know. It stimulates keratinocytes to make more MMP9, which means you're dissolving more tissue. It also encourages angiogenesis, like the other molecules. And it also stimulates gastric secretion. And we ask ourselves, how does one molecule that's very small do all of these things? And it does it because you have histamine receptors. A very long time ago, when I was in med school, we had 2 histamine receptors. We had H1 and H2. Now we have 4, and probably years from now, we'll have many more. H1 is the classical, so when a histamine receptor 1 is activated, you get the whole allergic reaction cascade. So you get bronchoconstriction, you get vasodilation, everything that you think of when someone's in front of you having an allergy attack. Histamine or receptor 2 is mostly in the stomach, and you get an increased acid. Interestingly enough, the cardiac tissue also has H2 receptors. So sometimes in an operating room, we will give an H2 blocker to help with a cardiac issue. 3 is mostly in the brain. It's presynaptic. We'll see later that we can use some of these drugs to actually help neurologic diseases. The H4 we don't know too much about. We know it's part of the immune system. And I can guarantee you some very smart person right now is coming up with medications to treat H4. OK, but that's histamine. Now we're going to talk about mast cells, right? Because there's just one thing that came out of a mast cell. Let's talk about mast cells. Mast cells trigger via a gazillion different mechanisms, OK? We usually think of it as just being immunologic, IgE, IgG. But it turns out that there's so many things that trigger mast cells. This is what makes them so toxic to us. So they are so toxic because there are a zillion receptors. The standard receptors, this is a great name, immunoglobulin E, Fc, epsilon R1. Okay, that is your immune receptor. And everyone thinks about that, at least in doctor world. The other one, mast-bound X2, is one that causes us a lot of problems that we don't think about. There are a zillion other ones, but the ones that I have separated there are histamine, type 1 and 2. And the reason the histamine receptors on a mast cell are important is because you get a paracrine effect, meaning one mast cell puts out histamine, goes to its neighbor, the histamine goes to the histamine receptor, and it activates another mast cell. So it is a horrible chain reaction. Okay? It's a paracrine effect, much like a senolytic cell might be. It also has cannabinoid receptors, and that's going to be important because we will see how we can do that or change that with medications. Anyway, a lot of different receptors, and we'll get to them in a second. So this is the one that is the most famous, right? And the way this works is IgE. It comes from a different cell. They attach themselves to the receptor, and when an antigen comes along, it takes the two receptors, sort of puts them together, they homodimerize, and it releases a whole allergic response. And in this response, we mostly get a lot of histamine and serotonin. And this is why mast cells essentially get demonized in popular culture. When the mast-bound X2 does this, it has nothing to do with IgE or IgG. Many things can trigger this, many things. Substance P, PAMP, somatostatin, oxytocin, a whole lot of things. And what's interesting is the trigger causes different things to be released. So instead of serotonin and histamine being released, you get more tryptase. And tryptase dissolves tissue, as we just learned. So this is extremely devastating to the body. Other things can activate mast cells. And these are important things to know. Systemic hypoxia can activate mast cells. So if you are having some sort of ischemic event, not only is your heart in trouble from lack of oxygen, you're about to have a huge release of all of these factors coming from mast cells. So it's going to take one problem and exacerbate it. Okay? Another thing to know, oxidized LDL. If you have any dyslipidemia at all and you're not on astaxanthin, you probably have a surplus of oxidized LDL, and that is going to create a baseline of mast cell release all the time. Who here is on astaxanthin? You guys are a bit disappointing, Neil. Shouldn't you have fixed this by now? Okay, radiation, being out in the sun, that causes mast cells to degranulate. Being cold. I don't know why people go into those icy cold baths. Cold causes mast cells to degranulate, as does like firm pressure, and again, snake venom. Snake venom is terrible for you. Okay.
It's natural.
It is natural. So is botulism. Okay. Stress. It's true. It's true. Stress can also activate mast cells. You can be physically allergic to stress. I used to think this was garbage, but it's absolutely true. Stress, corticotropin-releasing hormone is released when you are stressed. It comes from the hypothalamus. And it turns out you have receptors for that on your mast cells. So when you are stressed, this hormone gets released, causes your mast cells to trigger, and you can have a full anaphylactic reaction. So keep your stress levels down. Interesting, again, there are very smart people out there. There's a drug for that. It's called antilarmin. And it's $500 to $600 a month, so if you're stressed out, it's not a bad deal. And I think the name is spectacular. Anti-alarmin. Like, don't be alarmed. That's fantastic. You guys don't, I don't know if you guys find me funny or not. I find me funny. Okay, this is where I'm going to demonize mast cells. Having a normal level of active mast cells, obviously we all need, right? But when they become overactive, they cause a plethora of very bad diseases. At the top, standard stuff, and then the list got a little skewed, so I apologize. Allergy, asthma, anaphylaxis, inflammatory bowel disease, a lot of cardiovascular disease. Skin falls apart, you get eczema, you get osteoporosis. All sorts of things go wrong when you have too many mast cells and they degranulate. And my favorite, of course, is at the bottom, accelerated aging. And I have a funny feeling that no one here wants that, right? All right, just a few cool examples. Migraine headaches. So it turns out you've got mast cells in your leptomeninges, and this is the covering on your brain. You also have mast cells in your choroid plexus, your hypothalamus, and a variety of places, but these are the important ones. And when they degranulate, they cause neurogenic inflammation, causes your blood vessels to contract, and you get a migraine. So theoretically, you can cure migraines by being on a mast cell stabilizer. More importantly, cardiovascular disease. When you are healthy, you tend not to have mast cells in your heart or in your blood vessels. When you are not healthy, when you start having cardiovascular disease, they start accumulating. Okay? What's interesting is mast cells in your cardiac tissue, when they degranulate, will send you into cardiac arrhythmias. AFib, VTAC. People go, oh my God, I was fine and now I'm not. Well, maybe you weren't, but now it's worse. So a lot of people go into AFib as they get older, and I think this is one of the big causes. Cardiovascular disease. As we get older, a lot of us get plaques in our blood vessels, either in our coronary arteries or any arteries, essentially. And plaques accumulate mast cells. When the mast cells degranulate within these plaques, it causes these plaques to rupture. And at that point, if it's in your heart, you just had a cardiac arrest. I mean, you had an MI. If you had it anywhere else and it threw a clot to your head, you just had a stroke. So managing your mast cells is extremely important. And here's my favorite, because this is just so obnoxiously like in your face, you got to do something about it. Abdominal aortic aneurysms, called AAAs. I don't know if do you guys know what this is? Yeah, the doctor in the corner does, clearly. All right, so it's the letter depends on where exactly it is, right? And you die. So what he's explaining to you is in this picture, right? The normal aorta on the left, the aorta is the blood vessel going straight up and down, and then it bifurcates and your kidneys are on the side. An aneurysm, when people say I had an aneurysm is a dilation of a blood vessel. Like if you had a big balloon and you were blowing it up, it got kind of big in the center, that is an aneurysm, all right? So mast cells accumulate in blood vessels as you get older and as you get sicker. And when mast cells degranulate in your aorta, several things happen. So your collagen, as we talked about, starts dissolving. So the integrity of the blood vessel starts to go away, right? So that's bad number one. Number two, the smooth muscles become apoptotic. So another layer of protection goes away, right? And then it activates your renin-angiotensin system, and we talked about that earlier. Your blood pressure goes up, right? And your ability to make more collagen goes down. So now you've got this expanding balloon with more pressure about it, and you know what it's going to do? And it turns out if you rupture a AAA, there's over a 90% mortality. Even if you are in a hospital or an operating room, when this ruptures, there's over 90% mortality. So this is, I think, the biggest reason that this is incredibly important. Okay, as I've alluded to, mast cells increase as we get older. Someone dissected a rat, looked at every organ, and the liver was the only one where mast cells did not increase. In humans, we've not dissected everyone completely, but we do know there's significant evidence in skin, fat, and brain that mast cells increase. Just as two examples, found two great studies looking at skin. The first one was calf biopsies. They compared young people to old people, and they found twice as many mast cells in older people. And they found in that particular study that there were more frequent and severe anaphylactic reactions. And we know this. We see that grandma, when she has a peanut allergy, she's not going to do well. Second study compared 30-year-olds to 70-year-olds, 40% increase in mast cells. So we know this is a huge problem. Interestingly enough, it's hard to dissect someone's brain and count mast cells. So very, very smart people looked at CSF, the cerebral spinal fluid. It's a fluid that sort of goes around your brain. And they looked at metabolites of histamine. And it turns out that if you were older, it is significantly, if not double, the amount of metabolites in an older person than a younger person. So it's a big problem. All right, so what's our take-home message? Mast cells are, and this is a quote, so I'm going to read it. Mast cells are probably a main factor that potentially can be involved in tissue damage and aging changes in skin. Obviously, I took this from an article that was skin. Mast cells should be regarded as an important target for anti-aging therapy. And I would say it's not just skin, it's everywhere. And that's why we're talking about this. So what do we do? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about histamine. And then the second thing we're going to do is talk about mast cells in general in terms of therapies. So histamine. We can reduce the amount of histamine we make. We can block the receptors to which they attack. And then we can metabolize it more quickly. How do we do that? So histamine is made with an enzyme called histidine decarboxylase. It takes histidine, decarboxylates it to make histamine. It's a very simple reaction. And it turns out that this enzyme is in mast cells mostly, but also in basophils. And we can block it very easily with over-the-counter agents. So the list is here. It's gallic acid, piophorine, catechins. Turns out green tea is exceptional at this. So I think a lot of people probably already on green tea, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You failed astaxanthin, but at least you got the green tea. That was good.
No, both.
Oh, extra points. Extra points. Propolis, naringenin, that's one of my favorites because it's also an osteoblastic activator. But there's easy things to reduce your histamine load. Now we get to the fun drugs. H1 blockers, there's first generation and second generation, and these are the things you buy over the counter for colds. First generation, the first one was in 1933. I'm blanking on the guy's name that invented this, but he won a Nobel Prize in 1957. So blocking this was extremely important because it was the first time that we could actually block anaphylactic death. Everyone knows that Benadryl, as well as the other ones, are still very available on the market. But because they are non-selective, because they're first generation, they get to the blood-brain barrier, so they're very sedating, right? So everyone's taking Benadryl because they want to go to sleep. And there are a variety of other options. Second generations, again, tons of them on the market. They're going to say non-sleepy. Why? Because they don't pass the blood-brain barrier, so they don't cause that sedation effect. They're very, very effective. There's tons of them on the market. They are, however, more likely to cause cardiac arrhythmias. Sorry. Everything has pros and cons. If you elect to block your histamine receptors, the only thing you have to keep in mind is that because it's affecting a receptor, there is a feedback loop, right? So if you take a drug that blocks a receptor, your body goes, oh gosh, I need to make more receptors. So you make more receptors, and then you need to take more drug, and so on and so forth. So if you are going to use this particular strategy, which does work, you have to either rotate the drug or go on and off over a period of time to maintain the efficacy, okay? All right, H2 blockers. These are the blockers that reduce gastric acid secretion in the stomach. Incredibly popular medications. Tagamet was the first blockbuster drug in the 1970s. It was taken off the market from bad side effects. Zantac then was extremely popular. I think my mom lived on Zantac. But it turns out there are some additives in it that were carcinogenic, so that's off the market. Right now we're living with Pepcid and Axid. We use Pepcid in hospitals, if that's any indication. Problem is long-term use of this has caused a lot of problems, so I don't recommend it. Pneumonia, peritonitis, neck, C. diff, basically by, I'm sorry? Osteoporosis, absolutely. So this is not a great strategy, but it's up there just so that you know that you can think about it, but I wouldn't do it all the time. All right, H3 blockers are pretty much, there's only one. And it's, I can never remember like how to pronounce it, pitolisant or something like that. Anyway, it's used for narcolepsy, schizophrenia, has nothing to do with longevity, but it's in there for completeness sake. And we don't have any H4 blockers yet. I actually think that's going to be a huge industry in about 5 years. Okay, Last thing in this category is we can increase the metabolism of histamine. And it turns out histamine is metabolized by two enzymes. There's diamine oxidase and histamine methyltransferase. And vitamin C is a cofactor for diamine oxidase, right? So it turns out if you load with vitamin C, there's decent evidence that you can metabolize histamine faster. Not all studies have demonstrated this, but a lot of them have. And in a nod to you guys, as a just picture, I went with life extension because I thought that was funny. Maybe no one else did. OK, never mind. OK, let's talk about mast cells now. And we're all getting to the end. I know you guys are getting kind of like, where in the hell is this lecture going? OK, mast cells. We want to inhibit degranulation of mast cells. And there are some things that are endogenous, some things that are natural, and then there's some medications. So we're going to start with the things that are endogenous. These are things that in your body naturally. So heparin is incredibly effective. Unfortunately, if you take extra heparin, you will bleed out. So that's not a good idea. Ones that are a good idea, chondroitin sulfate is incredibly good. People think that it helps with joints, and I think it helps with joints because it's a mast cell stabilizer. DHEA, very effective. SIR2 and 6 activators, including fucodan, very effective. Of course, NAD precursors seem to fix pretty much everything. Other than that, there's a bunch of steroids that do it. Pick and choose. Personally, I went with the last three. Mast cell stabilizers in terms of things you can take. Everyone here knows about quercetin, right? So I thought, we're not going to go into that. Everyone knows that. The only interesting thing about quercetin is that it is a huge difference in men versus women. Men respond incredibly well to quercetin. Women do not. So I've never seen a study on it, but I have a big clinic, and this is what I have found. So women do better with luteolin. So if you're going to pick one of the two, go with male-female separation. I Googled on Google Scholar anything that you could take to block the degranulation, and this was the list. I have absolutely no idea what's stronger than what other than the top ones. So take them for what it's worth, because there's no comparative studies. However, one of my new favorites is PEA. It's listed at the bottom. So PEA, this is really cool. It's an endocannabinoid compound. So it's like a cannabinoid, but it's an endocannabinoid. And it turns out it blocks the receptors on mast cells. So this is incredibly effective as a mast cell stabilizer. Additionally, it's a PARP alpha agonist. Additionally, it's an AMP kinase activator. Additionally, your body upregulates it under stress. So it's a self-help thing that you can even add more to. The only caveat to this is the bioavailability is terrible. So one of the few times I've actually said you actually have to buy the micronized version. I've read many, many studies, so unless you get micronized, it doesn't work. But I think that everyone should be on this at some point. OK, we're almost done. These are the drugs. Mast cell stabilizing drugs. Cromolyn is the most famous. It is an inhaled agent. We've been using it in kids mostly for asthma for 1 million years. It works by binding to a calcium-binding protein, so you can't degranulate. Problems is the bioavailability, as I said, is terrible, so you can't take it as a drug orally. You have to inhale it. The half-life is very short, so you have to use it at least 4 to 6 times a day, and you have to be on it for 2 to 6 weeks to have any lasting effect. So it's really not very helpful for our purposes. I love the idea of this one, pimbrolizumab. I tried to order it from Japan after extensive research, and it got trumped. You know what trumped means? Yeah, means temporary suspension of acceptance of mail to the United States due to changes in US customs and regulations. I don't know what else to call it. You can't get it at the moment. We got trumped. However, you can get, I keep calling it ketotifen, but apparently that's not how you actually pronounce it. It's ketotifen, but that just makes no sense to me. It looks like it should be ketotifen, so I'm going to say it, and that's what it is. This is my new favorite drug. You can go to the grocery store and get this in oral or eye drops, or you can order it online and get the actual medication. Perfectly easy to get. Interestingly enough, it is an H1 blocker, and it is a mast cell stabilizer. We use it for allergies all over the globe. It is more potent than cromolyn. In skin studies, it's 6 times more potent. In airway stuff, bronchitis, that sort of thing, it's 50 times more potent than cromolyn. It's also a leukotriene antagonist, so it's going to block a lot of inflammation. It's a phosphodiesterase inhibitor. It's going to increase blood flow. an iron chelator so that we're not all iron overloaded. Bunch of studies. It's great for fibrosis. It's great for avoiding wrinkles. It's amazing. The only problem is that it's a little bit sedating. And how do I know this? Because I tried it. So when you take this, it's supposed to be for mast cell syndrome. And the dose is 1 milligram twice a day. And I thought, that's ridiculous. I don't have mast cell syndrome. I'm going to take 1 milligram once a day. And I was zonked for days. So I will tell you, if you're going to try this, start very low. 0.5 milligram at night will help you sleep, and it will help your mast cells. The other thing is it does say drowsy, weight gain, irritability. I was a little irritable, so I, take it with a grain of salt. And it does take a little while for the effects to come into place. So it's going to take about 6 to 8 weeks. Mast cell stabilization stays, the side effects sort of go away. So I think this is going to be a winner. Lastly, interestingly enough, I don't know if anyone here is on a statin. Fluvastatin turns out to be an amazing mast cell stabilizer. It bonds to the mast cell LDL receptor. The problem with fluvastatin, it is the worst statin for dyslipidemia. It's terrible, but it's the best thing for this. So if you like statins, it's a thought. Had to throw that in there to be complete. And okay, so back to our sort of summation. Our challenges. Mast cells cause inflammation and they dissolve tissue. We need to get rid of them, some of them, not all of them, right? Overactivation with age, it leads to pathology, morbidity, and mortality. And we've got to figure this out. So what do? We're going to We're going to minimize the negative effects of histamine, and we're going to try to reduce mast cell granulation by either the things that I talked about or whatever we find coming up in the future. Because we have not mastered mast cells, but again, it's a work in progress. Those are the gazillion things that I read to try to give you this information. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so hold on. We have people in Zoom that need to hear you as well. So where's the first question? Here, okay.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much for, wow, that's a lot of information. You're amazing. Now, the question basically is, if we increase or regrow mitochondria, now what effects would that, I guess, play to all of this mast cell, destruction to the body?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If we can regrow the mitochondria.
All right, so let's back up. So you have mitochondria in every cell in your body. I'm not sure I understand the correlation with dissolving tissue with mast cell degranulation.
Because everything, the mast cell, like you explained, all the effects that it does to the body, how
right.
Aging and all the diseases and so forth. So if we can now regrow mitochondria, how would that actually affect all of this that you just mentioned? Wouldn't that be like a solution in part?
I am struggling to answer this question. So mitochondria, every cell needs mitochondria, right? Of course, right? It's number 2 on my why we age list, right? And yes, every cell is going to have a certain degree of mitochondrial failure. However, theoretically, if you fix your mitochondria, you're fixing every cell. So theoretically, these cells have mitochondria as well. You're optimizing your mast cells the same as you're optimizing every other cell. You actually could be making it worse. Making it worse? Theoretically. I mean, mast cells have a lot of mitochondria because creating all of these secreted proteins and enzymes and such takes a lot of energy. So these are very high energy cells. So they're going to use a ton of mitochondrial energy. So if you're optimizing your mitochondria, you're making it easier for your mast cell to make these things. But there's no way you could say to your mast cell, okay, you're not going to work well, but your cells over here are going to be fine. So I don't really think there's a way we can sort of make that work.
I think that, I'll explain later, but...
Hold on, let me give you this mic because people online need to hear you.
Yes, hi. Okay, so I think that if we increase the mitochondria, then you have healthier cells, and your body can fix itself, is what I understand.
Well, I think what she's saying is mitochondria function, good stuff in, bad stuff out, you know? And if there's something that helps that,
Kind of resolves.
So the problem is mast cells are not designed, I shouldn't say that because that suggests that someone designed them. But what mast cells do is they get recruited to an area to either fight an infection, get rid of a parasite, cause tissue to change, right? And the issue is that if you have, let's say, a big infection in a place and they're sitting there, they're going to release factors to dissolve the bad tissue so the new cells can come in and build tissue, right? I mean, that's just the way cells work. What you're doing is you're optimizing all cells. You're going to optimize the mast cells that come in and cause problems, and you're going to optimize the cells that come in and like fix things. Like you're optimizing everything when you optimize mitochondria, for better or for worse. You're also optimizing cancer cells, for that matter. So again, every cell is being optimized, so everything's going to work. The problem is that some cells, right, like eosinophils, they don't cause us problems as we get older. They just do what they do, and they're not really a problem. Mast cells, as you get older, just misbehave. They show up where they shouldn't be. They release granules that they shouldn't, so they contribute to significant pathology. And unfortunately, upregulating just an organelle isn't going to fix that. And I love cell biology. Trust me, I will do everything to upregulate my mitochondria. But it's just not applicable to the mast cell per se.
Doctor, we have a question from online, and they're asking if you could repeat the 3 medicines you're recommending for the mast cell.
Sure. So there's cromolyn.
Cromolyn?
Cromolyn, unfortunately, it's inhaled, and you have to do it a lot. There's pimorelast. Here, let me go backwards. Which is blocked. Oh, I think they took my thing down. Pimorelast, which you can't get because it's on block from Japan. Ketotifen, Ketotifen. All right, so pimorelast is from Japan. As soon as we get de-trumped, we can get this, and I'm excited to try this. Cromolyn you can get if you have asthma. I just don't think it's going to work systemically because the GI absorption is terrible. And then this is the winner at the moment, is ketotifen. And then if you're really desperate, there's fluvastatin. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hold it. Before we go there, I'll come back to you, but go ahead, and we have a question here.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
got a stand microphone. Thank you.
Sorry.
When you take the fluvastatin, is it the same dosing schedule as it would normally be, or is it less or more if you're taking it for the purpose of mast cell stabilization?
Less. And the answer is you don't want to completely obliterate mast cells. You need some mast cells degranulation, but not a lot. So when I've been using mast cell dosing, I've been cutting everything in half. Because I don't want to obliterate the natural processes that are necessary. So what I've been doing is taking it, plus a lot of these make you sleepy. So if you divide the day into 12-hour blocks, I let my mast cells be for 12 hours, and then I block them for the other 12. So the answer, I would go, instead of twice-a-day dosing, you go with the same dose, but once a day for fluvastatin.
Thank you, Doctor. Here's a question from Peter.
This is going to be a smart question.
Oh, yeah, I apologize. So DAO, I was worried about what to make my DAO, get rid of histamines, because, you know, they're bad. They cause inflammation, right? Unnecessary. It turns out copper, not just vitamin C, but I think also copper and a few other trace chemicals that are found in vitamins made by a very good company we know.
Yeah.
And but one of the huge sources of histamines are in our food. Aged cheese will put a woman into miscarry.
Yeah.
Chocolate, nuts, sauerkraut, shellfish.
Well, sauerkraut's disgusting, so I'm not going to fight you on that.
Tomatoes.
Yeah.
I like sauerkraut.
Grapefruit, Florida citrus, even some eggs.
So technically, the citrus would be your ideal food because you get the histamine and the C at the same time, so you break even.
Okay,
No, but you're absolutely right. Some foods are absolutely higher in histamine. So people that you're going to metabolize it very, very quickly. So unless you want to sort of prophylax and take an H1 blocker at that point, which would be the way to do it, you know, we should actually serve second-generation H1 blockers at dinner parties with cheese platters. I think that would be fantastic.
Okay,
Just
but I mean,
ruin anyone's cocktail party there. like?
but mast cells can interrupt a pregnancy and cause a miscarriage. Is that
Absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely, they can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peter. Here we go.
Are you a neonatologist?
I've got a surrogate mother who's going to be carrying some of my embryos.
Ah, gotcha. Avoid cheese. Yeah. Just go with processed. There's less histamine. That was a bad joke. Don't do that. I'm sorry. Yes.
You touched upon what I was going to ask about briefly. Eosinophils degranulate. You mentioned that. Neutrophils also degranulate, and they degrade. They cause fibrosis in the lungs, other tissues. Is there anything is this not as big of a concern as mast cells with the aging process? And if it is there a holistic treatment option for preventing this kind of inflammatory process?
Good question. So if you put them on a spectrum of as much trouble as they can cause, mast cells are significantly worse than any of the other cells. And the fact that other cells also make these compounds, I mean, you can be slightly aggressive when you block mast cells, knowing that a basophil or an eosinophil is going to be able to put out some of these factors that you actually do need. Is there a way to block them? Not really, not yet. Give me 6 months, I'll figure it out.
I have a question over here, Julie.
Hi, would you recommend using some of these stabilizers and inhibitors regularly, even if you have no idea how many mast cells you have?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
The question here. I have a translation for this question.
Can the food activate those mast cells or decrease them?
Some foods can absolutely activate mast cells.
Example? A mix of lemon and curcumin, turmeric.
Mixture of lemon and turmeric.
Yeah, turmeric, ginger, black pepper, aloe vera. Can that be an anti-inflammatory?
So it's definitely an anti-inflammatory.
Can that gastritis goes away? And if you go to the sauna, can the mast cells can leave your body?
I have never read anything with mast cells in heat or sauna, but I will tell you that sauna activates heat shock proteins, and that causes gastric stabilization, which decreases release of acid in the stomach.
Can you breathe better? It creates mother cells. Stem cells.
I think I lost this question. Can someone want to translate this for me?
Actually, on this one, this is a little bit more complicated. Dr.
Tell you
Kaufmann
what.
will be here afterwards.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll be around. Feel free to come up and ask me anything, and we can sort through. Anyway, thank you very much.
We still have. If you,
I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, is the goal to decrease the mast cells in the body for longevity? Or?
Yes. So we have no way of decreasing the number of mast cells.
Right.
But if we decrease the granulation, the degranulation, releasing the granules, their secretome, if we reduce that, that will help with longevity.
And would any person be a candidate for taking some of these things?
I would argue that everyone in this room is a candidate because we all get an increase in mast cells. We all get an increase in disease processes. So absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I know there's a depressing answer.
So this kind of ties in with one of the Zoom questions, Doctor. Being asked if you, and I don't know if you can, but if you could potentially summarize in a couple of sentences recommendations and symptoms that would indicate problems.
So symptoms are going to be tough. If you tend to, actually, here's a good one. This is very common in women, and it's very indicative of mast cell problems. There's something called dermatographia. If you take your fingernails and scratch your arm and it lights up like a red scratch, like really bright, do you have that? I have that. A lot of white women, that's just because what our skin is, we have that. It's called dermatographia. You can write, and you look like a lion attacked you. If you have that, that means you have an overpopulation of mast cells, because that's what they're doing. They're releasing, causing vasodilation. So you have it. If you have a lot of allergy problems, you have it. If you are getting old and you have pathology, you've got coronary disease, you've got any sort of atherosclerosis anywhere, you've got it. The likelihood of having mast cell problems as you get older is exponential. So therefore, what does one do? You can go simply with blocking histamine. You can block histamine production. Less of very simple over-the-counter things you can do if you want to take a little shot at it. If you think that you've got a big problem, you go with an over-the-counter histamine blocker, right? But you want to make sure you rotate them because you worry about receptor upregulation. You want to go all out, go with a mast cell stabilizing medication, and the only one truly at the moment is ketotifen. It'll make you sleepy, but I think it's worth it until we get the other one off the list from Japan. I think that is sort of what you need to do and who needs to do it.
Thank you, Doctor. One more question from Zoom, and the question is whether I don't know if you know, whether centenarians may have low levels of mast cells. Are you aware? Are there any studies on that?
No.
Okay.
All the studies, they look at people somewhere between 10 to 30 and then 60 to 70. So anything beyond that, we don't know. I mean, it's certainly possible that once you get to be that old, maybe you have a genetic predisposition not to have excess mast cells. I don't really know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a question from Nurse Pat.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, when John Ritter died of his ruptured aortic aneurysm, one of the things they discovered that he had a deficiency in minerals. I want to say selenium, but it could be copper. But I knew one of the sources was to eat nuts. Would you comment on that?
Well, Brazilian nuts have a lot of selenium. Selenium helps with collagen production, so it's certainly possible. Anytime you have a weakness in your collagen production, you're more likely to rupture some blood vessel somewhere, either in your brain, your aorta, et cetera. There's a lot of risk factors for it. Absolutely. I mean, it's how Lucille Ball died, too. Yes. Be specific in your nut intake.
Vitamin C, of course, is essential for collagen.
Absolutely. It's a cofactor for, absolutely. Which is why if you don't have vitamin C, you get scurvy. So the answer is, you could stand up here all day and tell you what to take and what not to take. In reality, micronutrient deficiency will contribute to it. Cell failure in all aspects will contribute to it. I will stand up here and talk about the 7 reasons that you age, blah, 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 blah. Everything is contributory to cell failure. Some things are just more important to certain pathologies than others. So AAAs is more about collagen and why collagen breaks down. Anyway, so I know that Dr. Farhoon is dying to get up here, so I'm going to pass the baton.
I'm gonna be up in just 1 minute.
Apparently, that's not true. Okay.
Let's do one last question from Tom back here.
Absolutely.
Then I'll be right up there with you. Okay.
Would a high efficacy carbon-60 tend to reduce the destructiveness of mast cells?
So C60 is an incredibly good free radical scavenger. Decreasing free radicals will decrease tissue destruction. And to a certain degree, it may decrease mast cell degranulation, but it's certainly not going to change the enzyme. So if you get this overwhelming release of enzymes and MMPs, there's not a whole lot C60 is going to do. So if you take it prophylactically, you may have some risk reduction, but I don't think it's too significant. But I'm on a bundle of free radical scavengers, as I'm sure everyone in this room is. C60 creeps me out a little bit because it's a huge molecule, and the original studies demonstrated some aspect of kidney disease. I've been told that, oh, no, that was just a preservative that was in the solution, but I don't trust it. So, I know a lot of people are huge believers in C60, but I'm a little bit nervous about it. But anyway, good question.
Thank you, Dr.
My pleasure.
Sandra
Thank you, sir.
Kaufmann.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much. And for those of you that are interested, we do have a copy or two of Dr. Kaufmann's book, The Kaufmann Protocol, in our library here. Before we get on to our next talk, I just want to allow you all to stand and stretch. This is a good time to do that. It's so important to keep your blood flowing, so let's take a stretch break for 1 second. Stand and stretch. And if you're online, stand and stretch as well. I want to also thank you for the donations that you're making, both online and here in person. There's a donate button on the top of our website. We appreciate your donations. They help us to do more here at the church. Stretching. And if you find yourself sitting too long, don't do it. Just get up and stretch. Let's bring up our next speaker, and that is, of course, our own Bill Falloon. He's the founder of this church and one of the co-founders of the RADFest, and a founder of a number of organizations to promote unlimited lifespans. He's the director and co-founder of many organizations. He's been on many medias. Some of you know him, some of you don't. Let's bring up our own Mr. Bill Falloon. Bill.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil. I hope that people understand what we are up against as it relates to trying to stay healthy, trying to stay alive when we're battling the ultra-processed industrial food complex. We've got a whole industry out there dedicated to feeding you good-tasting food that's going to kill you if you continue eating that. And when you come to this church, we are the opposite. We're trying to keep you alive. So we try to reinforce healthy lifestyle practices and ask you to mitigate what we all know is toxic, what is going to shorten our healthy lifespan, what is going to create disease states that wouldn't otherwise occur, and what's eventually going to create every major obstacle to achieving super longevity you can imagine. So a purpose of attending these monthly events, we hold 8 to 9 live services every year, is to remind yourselves what you already know, and that is there are very healthy ways that we can live, and there are very unhealthy ways. And one of the most dangerous habits so many people have gotten into are sedentary lifestyles. They don't move very much. Now, I showed this slide last month. It talked about walking, not a whole lot, but just enough to keep your body active and adding potentially 5 more years to your lifespan. This was a huge study published at the end of 2024, and literally 1 week after I presented this at the church, another study came out, and this study provided even more startling data. And for those people who are sedentary, which is getting to be the majority of Americans, they just get up and walk a few steps and sit back down again, your risk of dropping dead is 300% higher than if you do a little bit of walking. And if you do just a little bit of walking, you still have an 83% increased mortality risk compared to those who walk 10 to 15 minutes a day. That's not an awful lot of time, especially in South Florida, but you can go out and do it without freezing to death like the people of other parts of the country have to. And if you walk more than 15 minutes a day, you will extend your lifespan in a way that you won't die sooner by virtue of being sedentary. This is a huge problem, and study after study is validating that while we're going to talk about some aggressive exercise programs here tonight, even just walking 15 or more minutes every single day can benefit you in huge ways. And this study showed that people who are walking under 5 minutes a day, which really is trivial, they are at a much greater risk of suffering cardiovascular disease. And this does not necessarily mean you have to be very aggressive in your walking. Just remain active. Don't let sedentary lifestyles shorten your lifespan, because the data conclusively shows this is going to shorten your healthy lifespan. Now, walking is good, but there's also the high-intensity interval training. A lot of data has been published on that, and this is sometimes just 5 minutes a day of very vigorous, high-intensity exercise of some sort. It could mean climbing the stairs, walking very, very fast, whatever else you can do to get your body moving, as opposed to remaining sedentary, which frankly, I have to admit, and I always want to admit, because I don't want to sound like a hypocrite, I've written books that have sold millions and millions of copies, 1,500-page medical textbooks. Well, it took a lot of time to write those. For about 15 years, I sat at a desk for 15 hours a day, hardly moved. I was one of those sedentary people. I'm not that way now, but in my early career, I kind of had to be. So I always want to admit when I don't do what I was supposed to be doing, but now I am doing more walking, more stair climbing, more exercise than what I was doing before, and I'm in better shape now at age 71 than I was 24, 25 years ago, when walking just 6 flights of stairs would absolutely wear me out. But we've got conclusive data showing that high intensity training, and that can be a combination of walking slow, walking fast, taking stairs, bicycling, whatever you can do, it pretty much benefits every aspect of your biology. You can correct major underlying health issues by simply being more active for just a brief period of time. Now, there's better ways to exercise. I mean, there's more that you can do than what I'm just showing you here. But you get all of these benefits from high-intensity interval training. Again, a lot of studies published on it, but it even benefits, of course, your mental health. So you get the health benefits across the board by doing something that's easy, something that doesn't really cost you any money at all if you can figure out how to do it the right way. So again, the power of reinforcement. Remind yourself that if you are sedentary, you are shortening your lifespan. It's a lethal habit that many, many people have fallen into. Now, we're going to talk today about the prospect of biological age reversal. And for a lot of people, they're afraid they won't live long enough to benefit from these breakthroughs that are occurring virtually every day in the research laboratories. But I always like to use historic examples to show how close we may be to finding a way to reverse aging in a meaningful way so you feel it, so your disease risks are back down to that of a healthy 25-year-old. And you look at the history of communications. You go back 3,000 years BC, they discover a form of paper so we could start writing things down and keeping a record of it. And then it took about, 4,000 more years to develop an efficient ink pen. But then you go to 1837 and the Morse code, an electrical pulse sent over a wire. That was the first means in which mankind was able to communicate instantly across long, long distances. And just 137 years after that primitive Morse code was discovered, we have the iPhone 1. And what I'm trying to show you here, and this chart will make it a little bit more clear, it took 2,500 years to go from paper to developing recorded history, 5,500 BC. And of course, that's debatable because there wasn't much recorded back then. But it took a long time, 2,500 years, to discover paper, and then more time to discover ink pens and that sort of thing. But you look what happened, that 2,500 years to discover paper, and then 4,000 years for the Morse code to be developed. But once they developed the Morse code, only 137 years, and wow, we've got all of these technological advances occurring. So once we make a major discovery as it relates to what causes us to age and how we can circumvent it, then that technology can accelerate much, much quicker on an exponential basis. And that's what we're doing with Yamanaka transcription factors. These are genes that reprogram old cells to turn them back into younger cells that can theoretically regenerate our tissues forever. This was demonstrated in vitro for the first time in a petri dish, 2006. Wow, for the first time ever, they were able to reverse aging in cells in a petri dish. Well, you move forward to 2022, 2024, they did it in live mice. They reversed aging in old mice using these Yamanaka transcription factors. And this year, we're going to start with monkeys. We're going to see if we can use the same technology that reversed aging in old mice and apply it to old monkeys. If those old monkeys grow biologically younger, our group will attempt to do some human projects in 2026. And the good news is many other groups are also doing this research, seeking a way to use these Yamanaka transcription factors to reverse aging. But if you're concerned you're a little bit too old, you may not be alive to benefit from it, I can tell you the pace of this research is accelerating so fast that within 1 to 2 more years, we may know so much more that we may be able to, grow people young again. This is what I'm looking forward to, and we're not alone. The wealthiest, the most influential, the most famous people in the world are all putting money into research aimed at slowing or reversing aging, finding better ways to treat disease, looking to improve the health of the human race. It's not only some of the far-out alternative health groups doing it. This is now mainstream. Age reversal has grown mainstream. It's being reported all over the place. And what we're hearing from people and what we're seeing in the media is that in 2026, it may not just be our research, there may be other people using different ways of inducing the OSK, Yamanaka transcription factor expression, in a way to reverse aging in people. It's moving ahead that fast, and we're seeing this occur. And we're having people even call us up for consultation. And we give that away for free. People want our information. We want to give them that information so maybe they will find that cure for aging. If they find it faster than us, I think everyone in this room will all be very happy. Whoever does it, it means we get to live a real long time. We don't have to suffer aging. Now, the Yamanaka transcription factors, the OCT4, the SOX2, KLF4, c-MYC, these are the original 4 Yamanaka factors. OSKM is the acronym. You'll see that talked about more and more as these studies come out showing OSKM, when it's introduced, when it's induced as it relates to expression, it enables old organisms to grow biologically younger. But the research we're doing, and many others, are just using 3 out of 4 of these Yamanaka factors. The c-MYC has a very interesting property. It induces the expression of telomerase inside our cells. Telomerase regrows our telomeres. Now that's good if we're controlling it, but there is a concern that if we regrow too many telomeres, too much telomerase, there may be some oncological risks, some cancer concerns. So our research is just OSK, which we believe will be both safe and not have that increased cancer risk. So OSK is what you're going to see probably more and more people talking about. Now, the first study that reversed aging in mice, the Salk Institute, did it in 2022, and they did use the c-MYC. They used all 4 Yamanaka factors, OSKM. They reversed aging in the old mice. There was no evidence of cancer, by the way, no side effects, and they were able to demonstrate something that had never been done before. An old mouse growing systemically, biologically younger. 2 years later, another group did another study using just OSK, and they were able to induce major reversals of pathological aging. The mice they used were the human equivalent of 77-year-old people. And they gave these old mice the OSK Yamanaka factors, and they were able to induce OSK partial reprogramming, improve frailty scores, and most important, I guess, extend remaining lifespan. If you're part of the control group, well, that's unfortunate. You died after 8.85 weeks, but the ones getting the OSK, they more than doubled their remaining lifespan. And that is absolutely spectacular to think if we're, let's say, a healthy 75 years of age, a really healthy 75, we're supposed to live to be around 88 to 90. If we can double that, wow, you get to live to be 115, 120. Think about that. If you get to live that old, well, at that stage, I'd like to think aging will be fully reversible. You might get to live indefinitely. So that research has already been done. What we're doing now is looking to improve that. We're looking to improve that because what's so fascinating is the scientists who did this study, they were only able to induce a tiny fraction of the intended OSK expression, and they still were able to achieve those remarkable systemic rejuvenation effects. So OSK is what we're seeking to add to your chromosomal DNA. This is the DNA inside your nuclear cell portion that controls cell functions. And there's a number of ways to do this. A lot of people will use viral vectors. They do work. They may have some side effects, so we're not using those in our research. What we are using are polymers. We're using plasmids. We're using lipid nanoparticles. These are ways of delivering OSK into your chromosomal DNA, and then once that OSK is in there, it induces the expression of pro-youth factors. It reprograms cells. And then chemical reprogramming, and I know that sounds hideous, but we're talking about small molecule reprogramming in which you'll take essentially some pills every day in a way that will cause the natural production of OSK in your cellular DNA. And that would be an ideal way of inducing this OSK. And that kind of research is being done by others, and it may be done in 2026. If it is, fantastic news. So I just want to explain to this group, I've shown this before, but it's important to understand how easy it is to add genes to your chromosomal DNA in order to achieve some potentially remarkable results. So let's just take the lipid nanoparticle as an example. It's a fat, a lipid, and we embed in that, and we're talking about nanotechnology here, the scientists embed the blueprint for the OSK into that lipid nanoparticle, which easily crosses the outer membrane of the cell. Absorbed into the cell, it releases the OSK mRNA blueprint, and that is then transformed by the ribosomes into OSK protein. And that protein then easily goes through the pores of the nucleus and binds to your nuclear DNA or chromosomal DNA. And when those OSK Yamanaka factors bind to DNA, they induce pro-youth signals. They tell the cell, stop growing old, start growing young. And as been demonstrated in vivo in mice, it works. And if we can demonstrate that in monkeys, and if others demonstrate it in people, we found a way, science being the people who do that, have found a way to reverse aging. So our 3 methods of delivering it, the research that we're doing, first, it is using OSK and mRNA. Another way to do that is a polymer with an OSK pDNA vector, a way of holding those genes inside a plasmid for delivery. And then there's that lipid nanoparticle that I showed you the example of. These are the 3 different delivery methods we are testing right now in mice to see which ones work better in monkeys. And as I'm going to show you, we're pretty much done with the mice. We're going to be moving on to the monkeys really, really fast. Now, this is a chart that I showed you last service, and I just want to make sure everyone understands what this represents. And what's so spectacular is this is the first time we used this particular method. We thought it would work, but we didn't know until we tried. So on the left of every one of those graphs is the control, and they have no OSK expression. They're old animals. This is, by the way, taken from live mice who had OSK injected in them just once or twice, a very low potency of the OSK pDNA. And you can see that there was expression of OSK demonstrated within 1 or 2 days. This is spectacular. We were so impressed with the results here. And this is another way that we've shown before. You can see the control mice, they didn't get any OSK, and they, of course, have no OSK expression. But by day 1 and day 2, we had robust biodistribution of OSK throughout the body of these older mice. And we're now testing those mice to see how young may they be growing. And we've already got preliminary evidence they are growing, well, they were slowing their rate of aging with just that 1 injection. Now, some people ask me what a plasmid is. It's a small circular DNA that is outside of the nuclear DNA, but it's used by scientists to embed genes in the plasmid. Plasmid then gets into the nuclear DNA in such a way that it releases the genes. So this is a way being used in the laboratory to deliver, to add beneficial genes to your chromosomal DNA so that you can benefit from what those genes induce. It's fantastic technology. So these are the benefits we saw with the P for plasmid DNA. We saw these nice increases in the multi-tissue samples of the OSK expression. And by the way, the bars to the very left, it looks like there's OSK, but the way the math was calculated, that is 0. To the very left, there is no OSK, and to the right are the improvements in OSK in response to the pDNA delivery. But then look at the mRNA OSK delivery. It's much more robust. Again, to the left of every one of those charts are the control animals. Those unfortunate animals, normally aged, they don't have any OSK, but we were able to induce it by embedding the OSK into an mRNA molecule and having that systemically delivered to their nuclear DNA. So you see there much more robust benefits with mRNA compared to the pDNA, and this is what really amazed us from this particular research. It was sustainable. The pDNA fell off after 2 or 3 days. We weren't seeing the OSK expression very much, but the OSK bound with the mRNA, it was able to produce sustainable OSK expression up to 21 days or longer. We stopped testing after 21 days. So we were able to demonstrate that potentially within the next year or 2, you'll have a syringe delivered to your door every month. You'll shoot up your mRNA OSK and boost your OSK expression, hopefully grow biologically younger every time you do it. That's our objective with this kind of research. But the idea that we're getting sustained OSK expression is a very, very, very good sign. So to give you an idea as to how fast this is moving, and I've been involved in research for almost 50 years, almost everything goes very slow. This is fast-tracked for all kinds of reasons. Some of our supporters, they're in their 80s or 90s. They need this or they're going to die. But if you look, July 2025, I presented this chart at RADFest, and you can see we've completed some aspects of the study. But by last month, on October, this is what I showed you, we were almost done. We were just waiting for the lipid nanoparticle work to be done on the mice. And if you look at where we are now, November 2025, we've completed everything. We're now ready to test it in primates. So this is something that I'm going to announce in just a few minutes. And by the way, what you're going to see right now has never been shown to a public group before. These are unprecedented research findings. They were revealed to me November 19th. I had a long night last night putting this together to make sure people understood we've made substantial progress over the last 30 days alone. And this is using lipid nanoparticles to deliver the OSK into our nuclear DNA. Remember, the 4 Yamanaka factors, the OSK, this is what we're seeking to put into your cellular DNA so that you get to grow biologically younger. And again, the different methods of doing it, viral vector, polymers, lipid nanoparticles, chemical reprogramming. We're studying right now the lipid nanoparticle to compare it with the polymer mRNA to see which one works better. We intend to test both, by the way, in the monkey model, and we're also testing them in the mice. So here are the preliminary results, which again, unprecedented, and we didn't expect to have success this early on. The very first time we put our lipid nanoparticle OSK construct into these old mice, we were able to see very rapid, consistent increases in OSK transfection or delivery. So you look at the control to the left, they don't have any. They didn't get any of the LNP, lipid nanoparticle OSK. But you see in the heart and the liver, huge increases in OSK transcription and, we believe, expression. Now, next month, you're going to see many, many other organ systems. These are the first 2 samples we received back, and the scientists who did this work for us, they said, we've never seen this happen so quickly. We thought you'd take 10 or 20 tries before we ever achieved this. We achieved it the very first time with the lipid nanoparticles, the very first time with the plasma DNA, and the very first time with the mRNA. So we're hitting right now 1,000 as it relates to what we're seeking to accomplish before we go into the monkeys. So what you're seeing here, by the way, I want to make sure this is clear. This is the transfection or delivery of the OCT4 Yamanaka factor into the heart and liver. This is the SOX2 transfection into the heart and the liver, and this is the KLF4 into the heart and liver. And again, there's multiple other organ systems that we're getting data back on every day from the lab as we send them tissue samples and they analyze them and get the results back to us. So we're achieving systemic induction of OSK in old mice that we hope to induce into the old monkeys. And this is a summary by the lead scientist as to what we achieved here. That word transfection, it means delivery of the OSK into the DNA of these mice, and they tested separately O and S and K. To think that nanotechnology has advanced that far where they can not only produce it and deliver it, they can measure it. They can measure how much is getting into the nuclear DNA, and we're also going to be able to measure what type of age delay, age reversal effects are occurring. So what we're seeing here, and look at this, November 17th, this is the report that I was given. This is how far we are along. We are literally on the front lines right now of a major, major scientific advance. And we did safety studies on these mice. We didn't want to kill any monkeys by giving them too much, so we gave varying doses to the monkeys. And the good news is we were able to ascertain what may be the ideal dose for the African green monkeys that won't create any toxicity, but may induce significant age reversal if it works as well in the monkeys as it does in the mice. So again, this is very current data. When you come to this church, you learn information before the rest of the world does in certain cases, certainly with this research. So at this point, we're taking the polymer pDNA and a polymer RNA, and we're testing that to see how well it may have induced age reversal effects in the mice, and then we will, of course, move into the monkeys. So this gives you some preliminary data as to which one is winning the race. Now, you look at that green check by these different boxes, that indicates a slowing of aging. And if you look at the mRNA column, that's to the very far right, we're checking all the boxes. We're only missing one there, whereas the pDNA only checked one of the boxes. This is a preliminary report, but at this stage, it looks like the OSK RNA construct and the OSK lipid nanoparticle construct, they're working about the same, and we're going to test both of those in the African brain monkeys. And the announcement I'm making right now is December 9th through December 12th, we will be injecting old monkeys with the mRNA and probably the lipid nanoparticle, OSK. We'll be looking to see what effect it has. We're doing aggressive baseline measures, aggressive interim measures, follow-up measures. We want to ascertain, number one, are we transfecting the DNA of these older monkeys, and are they growing younger? There's all kind of ways of measuring that, and by next month's service, I'll be able to give you a little bit of update of what's happening with that particular research. And you're the first group. You're the first group in the world to really see this. There's people who pay hundreds, not thousands of dollars to attend scientific conferences, good science presented. I don't think anything like this has ever been presented at a scientific conference that I've attended. There's just, it's still in its infancy stages. What we know today, well, it's good. We're going to know a lot more a month from now, 3 months from now, 4 months from now. So we're going to, I'm going to reinforce right now the fact that people are not always behaving the way they should. I think a lot of people at this church do, but most people don't. We're engaging in unhealthy practices, and we're losing very good people I've known for decades because they're doing what they shouldn't be doing, and they know it, but they nevertheless deanimate anyway. So most of you may have heard of Peter Attia, a brilliant medical doctor. He wrote a book called Outlive, sold over 3 million copies, New York Times bestseller. And if you read the book, you'll be very familiar with a lot of what he talks about, because most of you know a lot about what he talks about. And the good news is he got on CBS News 60 Minutes a couple weeks ago and gave a very good interview about extending average lifespan. Now, he's not an immortalist, and I want to emphasize we do not agree with everything he says, especially as it relates to people over 75, because we have some people in this audience right now who are way over 75, and they're in really good shape. I'm going to have them stand up maybe after this little interview. What we did is we took some excerpts from this 60 Minutes broadcast. You can watch the whole thing on cbsnews.com. But anyway, I'm going to play this excerpt of Dr. Peter Attia telling the world about what you can do to add 10 or 15 healthy years to your lifespan.
At 75, both men and women fall off a cliff.
At 75.
With the population level, it's unmistakable what happens at the age of 75. That's what we're up against. That's what I'm thinking about in the practice, is how do I create an escape velocity that gets somebody another 15 years there? My goal is to make the marginal decade as enjoyable as possible. The way I explain it to my patients is that last 10 to 15 of your years, if you don't do anything about it, you will fall to a level of about 50% of your total capacity, cognitively, physically.
Life is a sport.
Dr. Attia says the best drug to delay physical and cognitive decline is exercise, and he takes it in large doses. He developed his program after turning his back on the medical establishment nearly 20 years ago. Well, what Dr. Attia is prescribing is a radical change in how Americans think about their own health care, driven by the patient, focused on prevention, a practice he calls Medicine 3.0. The doctor and a handful of his patients have also taken a drug called rapamycin that's FDA approved for use by transplant recipients. The drug has extended the lifespan of mice.
But when a fellow physician calls some of what you're talking about hocus pocus.
People are entitled to think what they want, and just because someone is a physician doesn't mean they're even remotely equipped to evaluate the merits of exercise physiology. Remember, I went to Stanford Medical School, right? How many hours of education do you think I received on exercise?
Probably a few hours?
0 hours. And how many hours did I receive on nutrition? 0 hours.
And it was a tremendous interview, and hopefully that will save a lot of people's lives. He emphasizes very, very aggressive exercise. Now, some people can do it. Some people love doing it. Others are challenged. And that's why I showed at the beginning of my presentation these slides indicating that even if you just walk 15, 20 minutes a day, ideally an hour or so, you're going to reduce your risk of all kinds of different problems. So you don't necessarily have to be as aggressive as some people recommend. I advocate it, but I don't follow it. I frankly don't have the time to follow it. Now, I'm going to also talk a little bit about what wasn't covered in that interview, because when the media does an interview with people, they can't cover the whole spectrum. But Dr. Attia's book talks a lot about preventing cardiovascular disease, and he brings up something that we've talked about for many, many decades, and that's an LDL particle called apolipoprotein B. And when you have high levels of apolipoprotein B, unfortunately, your risk of heart attack and strokes, it goes up quite a bit. This is a measure of the atherogenic particles in your blood, and you want to keep it at a very low level. Now, last month, I talked about also C-reactive protein and the risk that poses to cardiovascular disease if the levels are elevated. Women with just slightly elevated C-reactive protein, they increase the risk of a stroke 69%, 74% increase in cardiovascular disorders and coronary artery disease. I mean, it's a deadly syndrome, or it's at least inconvenient. You wind up in a hospital being stented or open heart surgery. You don't necessarily want that, but if you have high CRP, you're a woman, you have over a 200% increased risk of coronary artery disease. So you want to keep your ApoB low, your CRP low. You want to do that as much as you can. And what they did in this study is they combined the evaluation of C-reactive protein and apolipoprotein B, and they found that it was a very effective way to measure one's future risk of cardiovascular disease. And what Dr. Attia advocates, and what we've advocated decades ago, is keep your C-reactive protein and ApoB levels as low as you're able to get them. Because if you're able to do that, you probably will reduce your risk of a cardiovascular disorder. And this particular study showed just one test of ApoB and CRP, it's a very strong predictor of your future risk of cardiovascular disease. And if your risk of cardiovascular disease is elevated, well, do something to lower it so you don't have that heart attack or stroke when you're supposed to. All kind of ways of making that happen. And this is something that I have talked about ever since I founded the various organizations I do that advocate healthy lifestyle, and that is defy conventional reference ranges. Because this is what you'll see if you get an apolipoprotein B blood test. You'll see that ideally you want to be under 70, but up to 100 is okay. You're low, normal risk. Of course, cardiovascular disease, #1 cause of mortality and morbidity, that you don't want to be normal. So the standard reference ranges are under 70, which is fine, but it's not nearly low enough. Look at what the data really reveals. Anything over 11 to 25 increases your risk of having a heart attack or a stroke. And every couple elevations that you see there further increases. You can see massive increases when it goes up to 40, up to 90, 100. And yet conventional medicine, if they see at 95, they say you're pretty good. And the reason they say that is they're used to seeing people over 120, 130. And I've looked at hundreds of various blood tests from people who think they're doing everything right. They often have very high apolipoprotein B levels, and I tell them you got to get that down. And frankly, the way to get it down is statin drugs, PCSK9 inhibitors like Leqvio, Repatha, ezetimibe. There are drugs out there that lower lipids, and they also lower apolipoprotein B. So if you're elevated, consider those drugs that alternative medicine in the early years attacked, and that's because some of them killed people, like Baycol. That was a statin drug, never should have been approved, killed people, it was withdrawn. But the current statin drugs don't induce those kind of problems. But I want you to look at that chart and understand that while conventional medicine says just get your ApoB levels under 70 milligrams per deciliter, you really want to get them down a lot lower. You want to get them down a lot lower. Now, Dr. Attia, he wants you in the range of 30 to 40 milligrams, and I totally agree. You want to get down to that very, very low range. He emphasizes as low as possible and as early as possible. And see, looking at the people in this room, there's a few younger people, and you've got a real advantage over us. You can get a blood test at your doctor's office, wherever, and see where your levels are and knock them down at a younger age. Or older people, we can lower them, but we're not going to benefit as much as younger people who lower them at a younger age. Dr. Attia Tia does not want to see levels above 60 in his patients, and we certainly agree. You want them as low as possible. These are my blood test results. And again, I've looked at hundreds of different results, and these are the lowest I've ever seen. And I've had to work at it. It just didn't come naturally, but I got my apolipoprotein B levels down to 24, and my C-reactive protein down to a virtual non-detectable level. And that involves a lot of prescription drugs, a lot of nutrients, a lot of dietary modifications. It takes a lot to get these kind of results. But when you do get a blood test result from your doctor, and or let's say a blood test, and he's prescribing a standard CBC chemistry, ask him to add ApoB and CRP to the test. And that could give you a real nice picture of what your real cardiovascular disease risks may be, and gives you a target to aim for to try to lower it, to try to get it below what the conventional reference ranges show you. Because I've advocated for my whole career, defy what conventional medicine tells you. Conventional medicine has always erred to the high side because normal people are high with LDL, high with blood pressure, and since doctors see so much of it, they consider it normal. You want to keep your blood pressure low normal. You want to keep your lipids, your glucose low normal. That's how you get to live longer. So again, this chart showing incremental increases in ApoB causing massive increases in cardiovascular risk. You want to keep your ApoB levels low. It's part of the reinforcement that we try to do at this church to emphasize what you can do to live longer. Again, my levels, I achieved them. It took me several years to make this happen, but I worked at it. I didn't just let nature take its course or make a few minor changes. I underwent major, major changes to enable those kind of results to occur. And again, to conclude every presentation, please, if you think you can avoid a problem by not having it diagnosed, or if you have something diagnosed, pretend like it's not there, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. I'm a professional at it. I've talked to people for decades who have issues. Those who correct their issues continue living. Those who allow their problem to fester in their body, it worsens and they die prematurely. And they pretty much knew they were dying prematurely by virtue of their unhealthy lifestyles. Many were unable to change it. So I appreciate the big turnout this month, and I'm here to answer any questions people may have.
Thank you, Bill. I have a number of questions coming in from online, Bill. Let's start with this first one. Is the OSK able to penetrate neurons in the brain? Do you know?
We think so, but we'll know that as we do necropsies on some of these animals once they do deanimate. We think we're going to be able to get some regeneration of the brain. In fact, some people are advocating that some of the first people that we test this on are dementia patients to see if we can't reverse certain forms of Alzheimer's or vascular dementia. So the theory is it will enter neurons. We'll be able to regenerate our brains. And the fact that some people want to do the initial research on demented people indicates there's some basis for that.
Okay, another one regarding the vectors for the OSK. Does it need to be done continually? And if so, how often?
Well, the amount of OSK needed to partially reprogram your cells back down to that of, let's say, a healthy 25-year-old is unknown. We're going to be doing the primate study, and that study will continue as long as the primates live. And we think you're going to be putting this into your body once a month, maybe once every 2 months. There may be an optimal dose where you don't want to go above it, but you certainly don't want to go below it. So it may be monthly, maybe every other month. That's what the research is all about, to identify the optimal amount of OSK expression you need to rejuvenate your body systemically.
And we have questions here in the audience. I've got more on Zoom, but let's bring over here to Dr. Kurt.
Well, which group and where is the group that you're funding to do the OSK research? I don't know if that's like confidential or if you can say that.
We're doing the primate research in the Caribbean at Primate Research Facility. The big pharma uses to do drug chemotherapy testing and all kinds of work. There are different qualities, let's say, of primate research facilities in China and Vietnam, very low-priced places, but they admitted to us that they couldn't do the research in the precise way that we wanted. The people in St. Kitts, that's the island in the Caribbean where we're doing it, they are older men who run that, and they want to benefit themselves. That's always helpful. They're very interested in the science, but they do very meticulous, high-quality work. And as it relates to biomedical research, until you really get into it, as I've been into this project, you realize how easy it is to make a little mistake, and it distorts the whole study. You don't know if you got a real result or a fake result, so we're being very meticulous, as are the people who run the primate facility. And they've got an MRI machine down there, they've got blood testing on premises, so it's a very high quality place, and a very expensive place, by the way.
Let me ask you.
The mice work being done in New York.
Okay. The presentation today, the PowerPoint that Bill just showed, we can make this available on our website for you.
Yes.
Okay. David.
Hi, Bill. Great presentation again. Any research or information do you have yet on how the OSK factors might interact with the mast cells that Dr. Hoffman was talking about? Anything on that yet?
I have no idea. We have no idea yet. We know about some of their mechanisms, but the most important knowledge is that when we induce OSK, it reverses aging. And there's not much we can do to reverse aging, but OSK is probably the leading candidate.
I have a question over here.
Hi, Bill. Great to be here from Canada. Always nice to come down to Florida, especially this time of year. Anyway, yeah, I was just curious, how many monkeys are you doing the testing on? How many non-human primates? And are you doing consecutive or concurrent with the tests with the different types of carriers for the OSK?
There are 15 total monkeys. 5, unfortunately, will be in the control group. 5 will get the lipid nanoparticle OSK. 5 will get the mRNA OSK. That's the theory right now. And then we'll be doing baseline follow-ups, intermittent testing of all kinds to identify, are we transfecting the DNA first, we'll make sure it's getting in there, and then observe, are we inducing age delay, age reversal. The laboratory costs are outrageous because we're testing everything we can to ascertain, are we achieving what we are intending to achieve, or can we adjust the dose and then achieve it? So this could be a very long-term study if those monkeys get to live a real long time.
Question back here, Bill.
Good evening, Bill. Very interesting, dynamic talk tonight. Really appreciate that. In my 45 years of practicing internal medicine, I've never seen the literature more replete with the need and call for exercise. And I hear that from you tonight. And it's interesting because I think all of this research also is going on in genetic therapy, gene therapy. I think yours might win before genetic therapy, gene therapy, hopefully. But I want to leave tonight knowing that with all these new articles coming out in the medical literature for the last 10, 15 years, especially in the last 5 years about exercise, you're a believer in exercise until we get to the better gene therapy or OSK therapy.
Absolutely, exercise and healthy dietary practices. We all know there's a lot we can do to reduce our risk of a degenerative illness, of a premature death. So yes, we have to stay alive to benefit from the upcoming revolution. And that revolution will be the delay and or meaningful reversal of biological aging.
We'll have another question from online. Would side effects and unintended consequences of this Yamanaka factor infusion show up in the mice?
We were able to demonstrate very high doses, not inducing side effects. And of course, we understood what a maximum tolerable dose is, and by understanding that, we won't be using that maximum tolerable dose on primates. Each one of these monkeys, by the way, is costing me $70,000. So we don't want to lose any by overdosing them. That's why in New York, we're doing aggressive research with mice, testing varying doses, and then scaling up that dose to equate to an African green monkey, which weigh about 28 to 30 pounds. That's quite a bit more than the mice, but we still have the ability to come up with a good number, maybe 1.6 milligrams to 2 milligrams per kilogram. That's the dose that we're looking to initially use, and we feel that will be very safe.
Question here?
Actually, I don't have a question, Bill. I just want to share some good news that I read in today's newspaper, and maybe somebody else read it, and it has to do with Alzheimer's disease. Today, they presented the article that the first clump of proteins that appear in the brain that indicate that Alzheimer's is on the way, they have now melted that protein as of today's article, and I just wanted to share it with you.
Yeah, the research on Alzheimer's is fantastic. All kinds of new theories as to what causes it, how to potentially reduce your risk of it. And I can tell you this, the healthy lifestyles that most of you practice here, you are slashing your risk of all kinds of dementias. But there's still not that cure for Alzheimer's. There is a theory, if we can use OSK to reverse aging of the human brain, Alzheimer's may not manifest. It may no longer be an issue.
Hi, Bill. Wow, I'm so happy that he invited me. Amazing. I can't say enough about the information you provided. It's not so much a question. I will be sharing this information with you now that I'm here. My mom's almost 95. She was diagnosed with stage 3 kidney disease. She's been at 22 or 20% twice, and now she's at 38, 40%. And that was the mitochondria enhancer or regrower that comes from a former 20-year NASA scientist that I will be sharing with you. Everything takes energy. God's creation is designed to self-heal. It just needs to be given what it needs, and we're being inundated, as you know, with so many toxins and so many levels. So my mom is almost, she doesn't hardly move. We do some grounding in the morning. I get her to walk around the dining room and the living room maybe 3 times, and that's about it. Other than a VX Power that it's one of those vibration plates, that's all she does. So with that mitochondria enhancer and some herbs, her kidneys have gone up twice. I've almost, we've almost lost her twice, and the kidneys obviously were not filtrating. If that can give the body what it needs in a reverse aging, because basically everything takes energy, and then the organs are functioning better because of that. A 95-year-old almost that is not even moving, I mean, what does that tell you about the body and how incredible it is? So with the work that you're doing as well, I can only imagine what's to come.
There's a lot of good research being done on improving mitochondrial function, and yes, coenzyme Q10, other ways of improving mitochondrial energy output can have a beneficial effect. So you're doing the right thing, absolutely. There's research being done now on mitochondria transfer, where young mitochondria literally is put into the body, it gravitates right to the outer membrane of the cell. There's a lot of good evidence that what you're doing is efficacious, and hopefully more and more people understand that.
Oh, hold on, one last thing.
Sorry.
Okay, okay.
If you look up Dr. Mary Newport, she's doing amazing work with coconut oil with Alzheimer's and dementia. Look up Dr. Mary Newport. Amazing. That's $10.
One last question back here.
Being published right now. We very much appreciate it. We used to live in a world of ignorance. Alzheimer's was just nothing you could do about it. Affected.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Falloon.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next service will be another hybrid Zoom and in-person, and we have Javin Pierce, the founder and the CEO of the Pierce Group Companies. He's the inventor and entrepreneur of medical device sector. And also, don't forget that we have the ambulance out front. If you'd like to tour the special ambulance, you want to be able to see that. There's going to be some tours during the banquet. Our event tonight has been recorded. If you'd like to see it, you can go to our website, go to the YouTube channel, and we'll also have the PowerPoint on our website for you to be able to access it. next month. Please share this information with all of your friends, all the people that you really care about, and bring your friends to our event. And now we'll celebrate our Thanksgiving in the social hall in honor of our speakers. Thank you.